So sorry about that. The video was cut off because I've been doing so many videos over the last couple days. So back to what I was talking about, I wanted you to think about the newspaper. Why Beverly Cleary is choosing to say that Joe's dad was reading the newspaper, and why do I keep repeating newspaper? I want you to think back to previous events from other chapters. Why is the newspaper going to be such a key detail right now? Joe stopped to pet the dog he was now sure belonged to him. It said so right there in the newspaper. That ought to convince his family. Ribsy looked up gratefully and thumped his tail on the floor. Then the telephone rang. "I'll get it," shrieked Darlene, who always liked to get the telephone first. "It's for you, Dad," she said, disappointed. "Who is it?" her father asked. "I don't know. Some boy is asking for Joe Saylor." Mr. Saylor sank back in his chair. "You get it, Junior. It's probably some kid from your school." "Oh, that's right," said Darlene. "Some people call Junie Joe. I forgot that." Joe tried to trip his sister on the way to the hall to answer the telephone. "Hello?" Joe said. "Hello?" answered a strange boy's voice. Joe Saylor?" "Yeah." "Well, my name is Henry Huggins," said the boy. "Your dog? I mean, how long have you had him?" "A while," said Joe cautiously. "Why?" "He's my dog," said Henry. "I lost him at the shopping center about a month ago." "Who is it, Junior?" asked Mrs. Saylor. "It's a boy," Joe told his mother. And the answer seemed to satisfy her. "The shopping center?" repeated Joe into the telephone, hoping to gain some time to think. Well, that's way on the other side of town." "I know," admitted Henry, "but my dog got into the wrong car by mistake, and some people took him home, and by the time they saw my advertisement in the paper, he had run off because they gave him a bubble bath, and then they couldn't find him." Joe had no way of knowing whether what Henry was saying was true or not. It sounded peculiar, that part about giving a dog a bubble bath. He certainly did not want to believe what he was hearing, not when it was beginning to look like he might be able to keep this dog. "Yeah, lots of dogs look like my dog," he said. "I don't think he's your dog at all." "Yes, he is," insisted Henry. "I know he is. I could tell by the picture in the paper." "Prove it," challenged Joe. "He always shakes hands with his left paw," said Henry. Mr. Saylor did not like to listen to people talk on the telephone. "What does the boy want?" he asked, interrupting the conversation. "Some kid thinks my dog is his," answered Joe. "Says the dog shakes with his left paw." Mr. Saylor laughed. "Tell him you haven't been introduced yet," he said, and returned to his paper. "The dog and I haven't been introduced," Joe said to Henry. "We never shook hands." "But perhaps the dog does belong to the boy," protested Mrs. Saylor. "Let Junior handle it," said Mr. Saylor. There was a silence from Henry's end of the line. Joe had a feeling Henry wanted to say something like, "Oh, a wise guy." Joe looked down the hall at Ribsy lying on the carpet and said, "Okay, if he's your dog, why doesn't he have a license tag?" "He does," said Henry, "but when he got lost, he wasn't wearing his collar. I took it off so he could scratch his neck." Joe felt triumphant. He was still carrying around a red rhinestone collar in his pocket. "But this dog was wearing a collar when I found him." He realized too late that he had given away 2 bits of information. The dog had no license tag, and that Joe had found him. "He's been gone about a month," said Henry. "Somebody else must have put that on him." "Yeah, well, you still haven't proved he's your dog," said Joe. So, as readers, let's think for a minute. What are you thinking and feeling about Joe? I personally am feeling a little bit frustrated. I feel like he's really kind of being very sneaky with Henry. He felt he had an advantage in this conversation. He could always just hang up if he wanted to. "My dad said he'll drive me over to your house," said Henry. "You'll see. Ribsy will know me." "Ribsy?" said Joe. "That's a dumb name for a dog." At the sound of his name, Ribsy picked up his ears. He had not heard the word Ribsy in weeks. "When I first got him, he was so thin his ribs showed," explained Henry. "So I called him Ribsy." "They don't show now," said Joe. "Can't be the same dog. Well,